So welcome everyone to County for Old Cars, and you join me today in Tess, my 1967 Triumph Vitesse 2 litre, and we're just taking a gentle amble today down some of the little coastal lanes in East Suffolk. And the purpose of today's trip is to show you one of the most significant Suffolk towns, historically speaking, and it's a place that some people will have heard of. I suspect very few people have actually visited, but nonetheless it is an integral part of the history of this part of the world, and worth seeing. Inspirations for this visit for me came from a conversation I had recently with someone who was sharing with me their concern about the future, and in particular what the future might hold in store for their children. I think this is someone who was alarmed at the state of the world generally, and particularly the fact that everything seems so unstable and uncertain, and whether we're talking about a conflict in Ukraine or the state of British politics, or a former president of the United States being indicted on federal charges. I think when life seems uncertain, there's a tendency among a lot of us to look backwards, perhaps sort of, nostalgia for a time when things seemed to be simpler, the world was easier to understand, and maybe there was a greater sense of permanence about the world. And where I live and work in Suffolk, there is a sense of timelessness about the place. We have these wonderful old medieval churches. We have houses which date back to the reign of Henry VIII. We have established walled towns from the medieval period, like Lavenham, and I think a lot of us derive a certain amount of comfort from knowing that in spite of wars and economic recessions and, dare I say, pandemics, Suffolk still remains, and people live on and they find new ways to live their lives and to innovate. And so the place we're going to see is an example of the transitory nature of life, and is perhaps a testament to the fact that things do change, and it becomes necessary for human beings to adapt to changing circumstances. Sometimes we're able to do things that mitigate things that change, and sometimes we can't. Sometimes we just have to roll with them. From a motoring perspective, we're in this sort of great state of change at the moment, where right now in 2023 it looks as though in England certainly petrol engines, or the sale of new petrol and diesel engines for motor cars, is going to be banned in the next 5 years. Other countries are proposing to ban the sale of new petrol and diesel engine cars in the next 10 years. For the last couple of years, it's looked to most of us as if electric vehicles are here to stay, and yet there's a sort of growing murmur of dissent, both among the buying public of electric cars and also engineers. And right now there's this state of flux where a lot of people aren't sure what they should do, whether to hang on to their old internal combustion engine cars, whether to go electric, or whether simply just to try and tread water and wait and see whether hydrogen or perhaps even synthetic fuels comes along and allows us to maintain our old cars, or indeed continue to drive cars that don't have to be plugged into charging points and limited to a range of, say, 200 miles. So I think there's a great deal of economic uncertainty, particularly for families at the moment. We've just seen here in the UK another rise in interest rates, which is having a significant impact on household budgets as mortgage rates rise. And we haven't seen sort of interest rate rises of this nature since the banking crash of 2008. And this is not only causing anxiety among people who rent their homes and also own their homes about what the future holds, but it is causing financial hardship right now, and people are having to make a choice between paying their rent and their utility bills and sometimes buying food. And it's an uncomfortable position for everyone right now. And I think the discomfort that we feel is made all the more worse because there doesn't appear to be an easy solution or an answer to this. Our economy is inextricably tied to the world economy and wider geopolitics. And so again, I think there's a sort of longing for an earlier period in time when things seem to be more stable and more certain. And it's quite interesting that most of us as classic car owners have a tendency to go back to the cars of our childhoods. So the cars that we love are often associated with people that made us feel safe and made us feel valued. So it could be parents or grandparents or extended family members. In some cases, I've met people at car shows who tell me the reason they bought a particular car or have lusted after a particular classic car is because their favourite teacher had one. And I think nostalgia is an important part of our sense of well-being. And this is really sort of evidenced by the fact that classic car shows, which are of course primarily attended by enthusiasts like me, are also attended by wider members of the public who have no real interest in owning a classic car themselves, but in a way it's the escapism, it's that sort of escape back to the past, back to a simpler time that they're after. And for an hour or so, you know, in a field somewhere in England on a Sunday afternoon, they can kind of leave the uncertainty and the anxiety about the present day and what the immediate future might hold, and just be transported back to a time maybe when the Rolling Stones and the Beatles were at their zenith, or when RAF officers flew Spitfires and Hurricanes. And of course what we forget is that each of those generations face their own anxieties and uncertainty and discomfort about the times that they were living in. And it's a sort of neat trick that time and history plays on us, is this idea that things were easier in the past. The road we're on now is taking us through the heathland just east of the very pretty village of Westham that we've just been through, and it's taking us on a direct route to the coast. And at the end of this route, at the end of this road, we're going to come across one of the most important ports in East Anglia. Now this is a place synonymous with shipbuilding and world trade. So obviously existing before the containerization that we've seen in ports like Felixstowe, but nonetheless this town, or in fact one could argue sort of a small city, has been so important to the wider economy of the east of England that up until 1832 there were actually 2 sitting MPs before the Parliamentary Reform Act. So it gives you a sense of the scale of this town. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to sort of, when we get there, we won't be able to go right into the town centre, and the reason for this will become apparent shortly. But I'm going to try to sort of point out to you where the sort of magnificent churches and civic buildings of the town are. And so we'll have to kind of stand on the edge and sort of look out towards the town, and you'll get a sense of its geography and also its place in history and in the present day. And it has to be said that this is a place which has changed dramatically over the centuries, and you know, each generation has had its own battle, largely against nature in this case, to preserve the way of life, to preserve the economy, and also really to sort of preserve the political and religious significance. Now the first part of it we'll see as we come in on our right is the old friary. So this sort of marks a significant part of the religious importance of the town. We're just coming in now towards the centre. You see we've got 1 or 2 visitors already who've got the same idea as we have. Parking is impossible in the centre, unfortunately, so what we'll do is we'll choose one of the public car parks, and it's not so much park and ride as sort of park and walk, but you'll get the idea in a second. So I'll just turn right here, and oops. Over to our right is the town itself, and just come through. Find a place to park. You'll notice that the car park we're in is not tarmac, so I've just got to be a little bit careful of stone chips here on Tess. So we'll pull in and have a little look. So you'll follow me now as we make our way up towards the centre of town. I got to say the pavements here are pretty shocking as well. I'll just turn the camera around so you can see where we're going. But we're just going to make our way up to the top. And so the town we've come to see, this fantastic port and shipbuilding centre, is called Dunwich, and this is it. So just out in front of us, turn the camera around, you are looking at 6 churches, just sort of in a sweep of my finger. So stepping out about half a mile, there are some magnificent stone civic buildings. There are obviously domestic houses as well, and you've also got roads, cemeteries, and the reason that it's all there and why we can't get to it is because of the erosion of the cliffs that you see out in front of me here. And it has to be said that this is just one example of the impermanence that exists in places like Suffolk. So what remains of the village now is basically this street here, which comprises the Ship Public House, which is actually a really great pub, somebody come to lunch, and then these cottages, one of which has been converted into excellent museum, which gives a sort of history of the gradual loss of Dunwich as it sort of fell bit by bit into the North Sea, but also sort of catalogues the various archaeological expeditions to recover artefacts and to sort of map the seabed. The history is far too involved really for me to be able to do any kind of justice to this in a sort of short YouTube video like this. So I would recommend, if you have the chance, to come and have a look for yourself, or even if you're interested in Dunwich, just to sort of give it a quick Google. For me, I think there's a certain amount of comfort to be derived from knowing that we are not the first generation to face uncertainty, whether it's from climate change, wars, plague, plagues or political misdeeds or even incompetence, and that this is a process that is a part of the human experience or part of the human condition. It also makes me value what we have in the here and now, and it's one of the reasons why I try whenever possible just to seize the moment, seize the day, and enjoy the things that make me happy. And you know, as ridiculous as it might sound to someone who doesn't get old cars, you know, being able to get into my Vitesse and just go for a drive where it's 5 minutes or an hour or whatever it might be, and really go back in time and allow that nostalgia to wash over me, knowing that the people who owned this car in 1967, 73, 83, 93, etc., etc., have all had their moments of anxiety and uncertainty about the present and about the future. You know, we are just custodians, and if you sort of look around at what we have today, again, I'll just turn the camera around. You can see Dunwich now is little more than a seaside village, with a very nice fish and chip shop over on the end, and a place to walk dogs and for children to play on the beach and to swim. And you know, there is a romantic notion of this city under the waves, which if you haven't heard this legend before, apparently on a stormy night you can hear the church bells ring from under the waves. Not experienced that myself, but nonetheless, it's a place that right now today we're under storm clouds, as you can probably see, and yet people are seizing the moment and making the best of what there is in the here and now. So yeah, there you go. Anyway, I hope you enjoy this slightly unusual trip to Dunwich and a short drive, and I look forward to seeing you in my next video. Take care.